So, Doctor Who Episode 1 Season 2 has aired, and it's left us with a lot of questions. More relevant questions, I would say, than the whole of Season 1 ever did. Because by the end of Season 1, we were just left with more questions. Okay, anyway, off the back of that episode, I had a few questions, and I looked at the season as a whole and had a little look about what was kind of known so far without spoiling it for myself too much, because I said I was going to avoid that. Mrs. Flood is the character that I'm most intrigued by. Everything else is just kind of like background noise at this point, because like we've waited for a full year so far to find out who she is, and we're going to wait all the way until the last episode to find out who she is anyway. I have my speculations, and I have a little few things that I kind of want to go over and talk about. So the God era, I'm not calling it the Disney Plus era because it's still a BBC programme. It's not the Disney Plus era because it's not owned by Disney Plus. But the God era of Doctor Who seems to have started with the Toymaker, bringing divine mythological forces into play. But is this era leading to something even greater? The destruction of Earth again, the mystery surrounding the Tardis, and the enigmatic figures lurking in the shadows all seem to be connected by one thing in common: time. So the first thing I want to talk about is Mayday. In the real world, Mayday is a distress call, and in Doctor Who, May 24th marks the destruction of Earth. Could RTD be using this symbolism simply to foreshadow the catastrophe? If so, this wouldn't just be the end of the planet. It could possibly be the breakdown of reality as we know it, hence the reality war. That episode literally could be us figuring out how widespread this catastrophe has been. I feel like it's leaning a little bit more towards Flux than anything else, but it's going to be different. Flux kind of was aiming to destroy the universe, and I feel this season's kind of going to go down that same route. It's not just going to be Earth that's gone, everywhere's going to be gone. The TARDIS is struggling again, but why? Ever since Earth vanished, the TARDIS had been acting strangely, but this doesn't seem to be ᴍᴏ the Mutt's influence. Maybe the ship herself is struggling with the loss of Earth. Belinda is definitely an ordinary nurse, and she just simply can't get home because there's no home left for her to go to. If the Doctor had tried landing on May the 20th instead, maybe they would have actually succeeded. Maybe they would have been able to get Belinda home. But then there was that unsettling ᴍᴏ groan. I just feel like that could be the sign of a god's presence, or they've used the sound effect as a chilling new danger signal like the cloister bell. Leading me on to who is Belinda. So she's not a hero, she's not the chosen one. She's just going to be an ordinary nurse caught in extraordinary circumstances. Yeah, she was mistaken for the queen of another planet, one that was even named after her, but that only happened because of her controlling boyfriend and no other influence. But is Belinda just a misplaced human, or is there something bigger at play? I fall more towards the latter. So one thing I did notice when I rewatched The Giggle the other night, because I wanted to see if the Toymaker had mentioned anything about Belinda or about someone that he would need to go meet, because I feel like that character would be cryptic in that manner, but there was nothing there anyway. I strangely do recall the Doctor being told that he would meet someone or have to go meet someone somewhere, and I can't remember what episode or season it's from, but I'm starting to think that maybe I'm just thinking that I'd already heard that when I haven't. It's possible. But one thing I did remember when I was thinking about the specials was Beep the Meep mentioning the boss. Now, the boss hasn't been mentioned since that episode, and the mystery still lingers, and people seem to have forgotten about Beep's little meep at the end of the Star Beast. So we already know that ᴍᴏ was the one who waits. So who's the boss? Well, I think that one possibility for the boss is Mrs. Flood. Given her eerie presence, she's definitely far more important than she seems, and honestly, Beep the Meep would make a great partner in crime for her. They're both a little psychotic. The other thing I'd noticed at the end of The Giggle was the golden tooth. So the golden tooth was picked up by someone wearing red nail polish. A lot of people thought that it could be the Master, it could be the Rani, it could be so many different people. Personally, I actually think that the gold tooth has been picked up potentially by Mrs. Flood. So that could very well be Mrs. Flood's very first appearance in the season. Because, as we know, RTD said she was going to be a long-burn mystery, and what a better way to introduce her than just showing us her hand, but not telling us who the character is. Potentially could be the case, one thing I'd probably need to go through is see if I could find any pictures of Mrs. Flood's hands if she's wearing any red nail polish. That would be a nice kind of hint to, by the way, this is who that was all along. It feels more connected with the series if it is Mrs. Flood that picked up the tooth, because throwing in the Master at this point would just be a little bit weird. Throwing in anybody that would like to save the Master would just be a little bit weird, considering the Master isn't expected to show up at any point, and we know that the Master was contained within that tooth. So it's possible that Mrs. Flood may have wanted that little trophy for herself. But something else that I noticed whilst I was watching the giggle was the Toymaker's warning. Who are his legions? Because in the giggle, the Toymaker said that his legions were coming. He wasn't talking about Sutekh because he was terrified of him. Remember, he said he ran away. That was someone else's game. So this suggests that his followers are something different, although they're still part of the Pantheon and they're still part of the gods. But so far we've only seen his daughter, Maestro, and no other members of his mysterious forces have showed up. So I think Lux could potentially be tied to the Toymaker, and maybe, just maybe, his sister Hecuba is waiting for the right moment to make her grand appearance. I feel like Hecuba potentially could be a big character if they bring her back. I said this last year and I thought Ruby Sunday was Hecuba. I'll give you the video links up in the cards above, but those all turned out to be wrong. But I'm going to hit that old barrel again. I'm going to say that Hecuba potentially could be someone I would be happy to throw in the ring as the big bad at the end of the series. Something we don't know is, and obviously we're only one episode in, so we don't really know what destroyed Earth. It's clear that something's wrong with time. Time is breaking down. Reality is going to be in chaos. From the episode titles, you can tell that alone. If there were ever a villain more suited for this destruction, it would be Hecuba, a master manipulator of time itself. Is this all leading into the unholy trinity of villains that RTD's mentioned? Because we have Hecuba, the ruler of time, Conrad Clark, the embodiment of deception and rebellion, and the trickster, who basically is a false prophet. So if we look at what the actual Unholy Trinity is, the Unholy Trinity in the biblical context refers to three figures associated with the events described in the Book of Revelations: Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. These entities are presented as antagonists to the Godhead, playing key roles in the events playing up to the end times. But here's a more detailed synopsis of each member of the Unholy Trinity. So this is the biblical version. So I'm saying that the Satan version of this Unholy Trinity could be Hecuba, because they're often depicted as the instigator and the mastermind behind the events of the end times, and is seen as a counterfeit of the Father, representing the forces of evil and rebellion against God. She would slot in there quite nicely. The second one's the Antichrist, which I think could potentially be Conrad Clark. So this figure is portrayed as a human leader who opposes Christ, often a powerful and charismatic leader who embodies deception and rebellion. He is seen as a counterfeit of Christ, the Son. So what we've seen so far and some of the behind the scene images and stuff is Conrad seems to become this, I don't even know how to describe it, but he's like some kind of leader anyway. It's like politics in a way, and he seems to be doing exactly what the Antichrist would do in the Unholy Trinity, but in Doctor Who's version of that. And the last one, I'm going to say the false prophet could be the trickster. I mean, it could be some other god, because we've wanted the trickster back for so many years, and I feel the only place that's suitable for the trickster to come back would be the end episodes. But this entity is often associated with false religious systems or a charismatic figure who promotes false teachings and ideology. They're seen as a counterfeit of the Holy Spirit, spreading lies and deceiving people. It's something that the trickster would fit into, not completely, but I mean, RTD changed Sutekh, so who's to say that the trickster won't be changed as well? I don't think, if the trickster comes back, I don't think the trickster's going to look a lot like what it did in Sarah Jane Adventures. I think it's going to be a lot more budgeted and the costume's going to be a lot better. So I feel like we don't know a lot about the trickster, so there's a lot of room there to add mythology and lore to the trickster anyway. So I feel like the god that would be suited most to that would be the trickster, and that would be another two of the Toymaker's legions. It would make sense. And there's potential there that the Toymaker could be in the background of all of this as well. They would all fit into these categories nicely. And if it's twisted and contorted to fit the Doctor Who narrative, they would fit in even more. So if this trio is behind everything, it's not just Earth that's at stake, it's the fabric of existence itself. So that's a big one. It's kind of a little bit different to Flux, because Flux was just erasing the universe. This is literally dismantling the fabric of its existence, the reality of existence. If you want to know more about who Hecuba is, she isn't new to Doctor Who. She was in the Queen of Time audio drama. In that, she appears as a powerful immortal, dwelling in a world of clocks and plotting against the Doctor, which makes sense because that's what Mrs. Flood looks to have been doing for all this time. Originally, she was meant to be a villain in a Celestial Toymaker sequel before being shifted to the expanded media, but now she might finally be stepping into the spotlight. If you want to know more about this god, I have a whole video on her. She's an interesting character. And Mrs. Flood, well, her name might be more than it actually seems as well, because Flood has connections to time, particularly through reoccurrence intervals, like the concept of a 100-year flood. But this doesn't mean that a flood happens every 100 years, but rather that it has a statistical chance of occurring in any given year. If Mrs. Flood is linked to time in this way, her role could be deeply intertwined with greater chaos unfolding. So everything, the destruction of Earth, the Toymaker's warnings, the Tardis' instability, seem to be pointing towards a bigger revelation, a godlike war waging across time, with Hecuba, better known as Mrs. Flood, at its heart. And if this theory holds true, it's definitely true what Mrs. Flood said in the top of that roof.
And what happens, you might wonder, to that mysterious traveller in time and space known as the Doctor? I'm sorry to say his story ends in absolute terror.
These last 2 seasons are going to go meta in a way that the Doctor has awareness of being in a TV show of some kind. And I can't shake the feeling that I feel like these last 2 seasons are going to be reversed and we're going to get another 15th Doctor rather than it being ᴍᴏ. There might be a regeneration, like a degeneration and then a regeneration of some kind. And I feel like that could be complicated, but it would be so cool to have everything that's happened in the last 2 years be reversed right back to that unit helipad, and 14 doesn't split and bigenerate. Instead, 14 actually regenerates into the 15th Doctor, which isn't ᴍᴏ. It could be complicated, but I can't seem to shake it. I feel like that is something that could be epic. It could be cool to basically turn around and say you've watched 2 years of Doctor Who for no reason. I don't know, I feel like that's such an RTD thing to do to us. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know your theories, because I love reading all your guys' theories, because it gives me more ideas about what could be going on in the season. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Trying to hit 4,000 subscribers. We're so close. I'm so excited about it. Thank you very much to all yous who have subscribed.